Did you know that J. Asher's 13 Reasons Why started out with a different title? He had named it Baker's Dozen, given Hannah Baker is the main character and she shares 13 tapes, with the number 13 being commonly known as a baker's dozen. Like most authors, he didn't really want to change the title. But regardless of how you feel about the book, I think most of us will agree that 13 Reasons Why is the more enticing name. It creates intrigue. 13 reasons for what? It promises a list, and with 13 being an unlucky number in many cultures, it feels ominous, especially when the reader learns the novel is about suicide. Titles can be short and simple, like The Shining, or they can be long and quirky, as with the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society. They can evoke the genre in an obvious way, as an Interview with the Vampire, or feature a title that doesn't fully make sense until the very end, like with The Sense of an Ending. Titles shine a spotlight on the heart of the novel, directing a reader's attention to an important element that thematically ties the story together. For some writers, coming up with a title is even harder than writing the book. After analyzing a few hundred novels, I've noticed patterns that might help you brainstorm ideas for a musical, memorable, and marketable title. One that sounds like poetry to the ear, that readers will easily remember, and that captures people's attention. The blog Novel Writing Help recommends naming your baby early on because 1. It's good for your motivation. When you give something a name, it always feels more real, more alive. 2. It's good for the continuing development of the idea, because thinking about what to call your novel forces you to think hard about what the novel is actually about. Titles might relate to a key plot event or element, a character's name or their role, an important setting, an allusion to a novel, poem, song, or religious text, a symbol or metaphor, the story's primary theme, or a phrase, often one taken from the book itself. By exploring each of these 7 categories, we'll uncover strategies for titling your own work in progress. Afterward, we'll look at marketing considerations for titles. Option 1. Key plot event or element. In many stories, the inciting incident is this massive event that shapes the entire plot. In The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy, which is set during the Cold War, a Soviet captain goes rogue aboard a submarine carrying ballistic missiles, and the submarine's name is Red October. So if you have that type of dramatic, attention-grabbing premise, it could be worthy of being your title. Instead of an event, it might be an item that's central to the story's plot, like in The Hatchet or The Notebook. If you're writing fantasy or sci-fi, it might be the most distinctive world-building element. Divergent and Mistborn highlight what makes the protagonist special in terms of their abilities. The Time Machine and the Andromeda Strain show what sci-fi concept is being explored. With series, authors often use parallel naming structures, as with the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, The Fifth Season, The Obelisk Gate, The Stone Sky. The Earth-related word choices connect back to the series' focus on characters who can manipulate seismic energy. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang was followed by The Dragon Republic and The Burning God. Each title highlights an important plot element and contains emotionally charged words that suggest danger, conflict, and mystery. The series perhaps best known for this naming strategy is, of course, Harry Potter. For each book, the title contains the person, place, or thing that's part of the story's core mystery, and they all have a fantasy ring to them, evoking the idea of magic and spurring questions like, what's the Order of the Phoenix? Or who could the Half-Blood Prince be? Murder mystery series are also known for using patterns related to the book's plot. Sue Grafton's Alphabet series features crime-related words. A is for alibi, B is for burglar, C is for corpse. Sometimes it's more that the titles feel similar, even if they don't fit one theme, like with Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe series, which often uses the adjective noun pattern. The big sleep, the high window, the long goodbye. If you plan on writing a longer series, consider what type of parallel titles you might use to make the series feel cohesive and broadcast to readers that the books are part of the same sequence. Plot-related titles obviously work well with plot-driven novels, where the story's hook stems from its exciting premise. To brainstorm, ask yourself, how would I describe the main conflict in a few words? Option 2. Character name or role. Characters seem like the most popular choice for titles, promising larger-than-life personalities. Some famous protagonist titles include Emma, Coraline, and A Man Called Ove. It might contain their full name, like Oliver Twist or Bridget Jones's Diary. The character might have an unusual name that warrants attention, like the evolution of Calpurnia Tate. Or important secondary characters could take the spotlight as figures who have the greatest impact on the protagonist, or who act as the catalyst for the story. Lolita, The Great Gatsby, Rebecca. In young adult romances, the couple's name might become the title. Emmy and Oliver, Eleanor and Park, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. I'm quite fond of the title Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, because it rhymes in a way that clashes with the idea of death, which matches the novel's tragicomic tone. You can also combine your character's name with a phrase that captures the core conflict. Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple is a contemporary drama with touches of humor. It stars an eccentric architect named Bernadette who runs away, and her daughter goes on a quest to find her. If your protagonist or another character has a strong personality, then a character name could make for a unique title. Another strategy when including a character's name is to pair them with an interesting detail. What stands out about their world? In a book where a boy grows a giant peach and lives inside of it with talking insects, James and the Giant Peach seems like a fitting title. When a young girl survives in the Alaskan wilderness with the help of a wolf pack, a name like Julie of the Wolves sounds pretty awesome. Or maybe the story involves a character traveling to a special place, as in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Anne of Green Gables. These types of titles are most often used for children's fiction or middle-grade novels. Adult titles that combine characters with interesting details might focus more on crime, love, and death, as with The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and John Dies at the end. Some novels might have hidden character names, with titles that don't sound like character names at all until you've read the book. Strange the Dreamer is about a man named Laszlo Strange, and dreaming plays an important role in the story. The protagonist in The 10,000 Doors of January is named January for a specific reason, and she travels through magical doorways. And Looking for Alaska isn't about seeking out that great northern expanse, but about the narrator metaphorically trying to understand a girl named Alaska. If your character's name has a double meaning, you could consider how to make a play on it in the title. A character's role, or that of a group of people, might be used instead of their name. These roles often suggest a story. I want to read about thieves, liars, and spies, like the book thief, Pretty Little Liars, and the spy who came in from the cold. To use characters in your title, consider what's intriguing about them or their role in the story. Option 3. Important setting. If your story revolves around a specific setting, that's a clear contender for a title. The entire story doesn't need to take place there, but if it shapes the character or plot in a powerful way, you can underscore its importance by giving it top billing. Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane is a psychological thriller set on a desolate island that houses a hospital for the criminally insane. Lehane modeled the setting after Long Island and Boston Harbor, which he visited during a blizzard as a child. The word shudder evokes the verb shudder, meaning to tremble, especially in fear, as well as the idea of window shutters, a place that's closed off and hidden from the world. From the title alone, we get the sense that something terrible will happen in this remote place. Settings often take on a secondary symbolic meaning, and the title can reflect that. In Jhumpa Lahiri's The Lowland, the title refers to a section of marshy land between two ponds in India. The novel traces the lives of two brothers as they grow up, starting close and then drifting apart. The setting echoes the character's journey. The marsh floods during monsoon season, merging the ponds together, but in summer the water evaporates. So crucial is the setting to the story that Lahiri opens with a description of the lowland before introducing the main characters. A setting-related title can reference a familiar place that the reader might already associate with particular emotions or ideas. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas immediately brings to mind drugs, sex, and gambling in Sin City, which isn't far off the mark from what the book is about. The title could also involve an entirely made-up setting, like with Jurassic Park, The Night Circus, and the house in the Cerulean Sea. The key setting might not be a place, but a time period, like George Orwell's 1984, which was published in 1949 as a warning for what society could become in just a few decades. When you feature a place that creates a strong atmosphere, whether that's terror or romance or any emotion in between, a setting-related title can set the mood for the entire story. Option 4. Allusion. Allusions are references to other famous text. All art we create is in conversation with all other art that has existed before. Take The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. It's the story of an orphan boy raised by ghosts in a graveyard. The premise suddenly sounds familiar when you think of an orphan growing up in a jungle with talking animals. Gaiman decided to take Rudyard Kipling's classic collection of short stories, The Jungle Book, and set it in a graveyard. Each of the chapters feels like a short story, and some of them have direct parallels to Kipling's work, with the title itself being a nod to the novel's inspiration. Allusions can make for good titles when the novel draws heavily from a particular source. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon is a title taken directly from a Sherlock Holmes short story, The Adventure of Silver Blaze by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Haddon's protagonist, Christopher, loves reading Sherlock Holmes, and uses the Hound of the Baskervilles in his own detective work as he investigates the murder of a neighborhood dog. In the original Holmes story, the curious incident is the fact that the dog stayed quiet throughout the night as the crime happened, suggesting that the dog knew the culprit. And that plot point is echoed in Haddon's story. Allusions are also a way to guide the reader's experience. The text that's being referenced acts as a lens through which the reader can interpret the novel at hand, comparing and contrasting the themes. Sometimes allusions appear in an epigraph, a quote placed before the beginning of the novel as a way of explaining the title. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe references the poem The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats.
Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world.
This beautifully captures the essence of the novel, wherein the British colonization of Nigeria creates strife and imbalance. Plays, especially those by Shakespeare, are another popular source of inspiration. The dystopian novel Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is a reference to The Tempest, and the story includes numerous mentions of the bard and his place. As in the original play, the Brave New World phrasing is meant to be ironic, given that Huxley's novel depicts the dark side of a seemingly utopian world. It's not just old literary classics that reference Shakespeare. John Green's young adult drama, The Fault in Our Stars, is an altered quotation from Julius Caesar, in which Cassius says, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings." In other words, people are responsible for their own fates. But John Green omits the "not" in his title to turn the phrase on its head, implying that bad fates, like cancer, are often unavoidable. But as Augustus says in the book, you don't get to choose if you get hurt in this world, but you do have some say in who hurts you. The Bible is another highly alluded to text. John Steinbeck was struggling to title one of his novels when his wife suggested The Grapes of Wrath. Now that's a super weird name at first glance, but it alludes to a biblical passage by way of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, which draws on the traditional image of Christ standing in a winepress. The phrase also appears toward the end of the novel after wealthy farmers destroy crops to drive up food prices. And in the eyes of the hungry there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for the vintage. More contemporary novels might reference song titles or lyrics. Song titles can't be copyrighted, but if you're borrowing specific lyrics, you'll likely have to get legal permission to do so. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas comes from rapper Tupac's thug life philosophy, which ties to the book's themes of social oppression. If you're writing a novel inspired by other works of art, an allusion-based title can be a good choice. What books, poems, texts, or songs influenced your novel? Are your novel's inspirations alluded to in the text? If so, look at famous quotes from the source material and highlight any attention-grabbing phrases. Option 5. Symbol or metaphor. This is often an object or abstract concept that represents a central idea in the novel. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt is shaped around a famous Dutch painting entitled The Goldfinch. This painting was the last thing the main character saw with his mother before her death, so for him it represents the survival of his mother's memory. Using a symbol as a book's title draws attention to its significance and encourages the reader to make those meaningful connections. Bees are an important metaphor in The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. The title is directly referenced within the story. Most people don't have any idea about all the complicated life going on inside a hive. Bees have a secret life we don't know anything about. Throughout the story, it's clear that the characters too have complicated secret lives. Your book title can have a surface-level appeal that also yields a deeper meaning. Even a simple title like Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine might just seem to be about the wine made from dandelion petals, mentioned in the novel. But since the story is about the joys of childhood, Dandelion Wine also embodies all the magic of a summer memory. As Bradbury writes, "Hold summer in your hand, pour summer in a tiny glass, of course, the smallest tingling sip for children. Change the season in your veins by raising glass to lip and tilting summer in." Option 6. Theme. Instead of aiming for any type of subtlety, you can just whack your novel's meaning on the nose by putting the theme in the title. Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, which is over 1,000 pages long and more of a philosophical treatise than a novel, follows the lives of different Russian aristocrats during the Napoleonic Wars. It's a sweeping historical text, and the title captures the feeling of that massive scale. Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen has a nice alliterative ring, but it also describes the core qualities in the novel's main characters, Eleanor and Marianne. In fact, Austen's working title for that novel was supposedly Eleanor and Marianne. She followed a similar naming convention for Pride and Prejudice, which was originally titled First Impressions. In a parallel fashion, the qualities of Pride and Prejudice relate to the novel's main characters, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, who both show signs of Pride and Prejudice in their first meetings. Some literary critics think Austen took the title from a popular novel she was known to have admired, Frances Burney's Cecilia, in which a character declares, "The whole of this unfortunate business has been the result of pride and prejudice." On the more contemporary side, Ian McEwan's choice of atonement for a title makes perfect sense at the novel's end, since the story is ultimately about atoning for a wrongdoing. When focusing on a theme in the title, make sure your novel truly encompasses that theme on every level, from its plot to the cast of characters. Octavia Butler's Kindred tells the story of a black woman living in 1976 Los Angeles, who is sent back in time to antebellum Maryland, where she repeatedly clashes with her white ancestor. Kindred can denote familial connections, one's blood-related ancestors, but it also relates to the idea of kindred spirits, people who are similar in nature or character. The novel explores both levels of meaning through the complex feelings of love and hate between the protagonist and her white ancestor. If you're using a theme in your title, different aspects of the novel should tie back to that title, making the reader reflect on those abstract concepts and what questions the author is trying to wrestle with in telling this story. Option 7. Phrase. Phrases as titles are often lifted directly from the text itself. They might include a personal pronoun like I, my, they, us, or we. I am the messenger. To all the boys I've loved before. This body's not big enough for both of us. Flash fiction writer extraordinaire Kathy Fish advises using a fragment or a sentence you edited out of the story, as that can create resonance, given the line obviously fits the story in some indirect way. She also suggests using a phrase your point of view character would say, but doesn't in the story, which establishes the narrative voice, such as in her flash fiction piece, Another Story About Me and Some Guy. Anthony Mara found the title for a constellation of vital phenomena in the pages of a medical dictionary. In an interview with Powell's City of Books, he shared, "It was definitely a fortuitous little twist of fate. There are these 6 vital phenomena: organization, irritability, adaptation, movement, growth, and reproduction, and there are 6 point-of-view characters in the novel. Life is structured as an intersection and a constellation, really, of these 6 vital phenomena. The novel was structured as a constellation of these 6 characters, and as soon as I saw it, I just had to use this as the title." The title appears in the novel itself when a character reads a medical dictionary, where life is defined as a constellation of vital phenomena. Harper Lee's title of To Kill a Mockingbird pops up as a phrase when Atticus, the father of the protagonist Scout, says, "Remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." Another character elaborates that mockingbirds make music for them to enjoy, singing their hearts out, and that's why it's a sin to kill them. Scout remembers this lesson and notes later that hurting their kind-hearted, reclusive neighbor, Boo Radley, would be sort of like shooting a mockingbird. In this way, phrases as titles capture the thematic core of the novel, and they usually appear in the story at a moment when the character is learning an important lesson that changes their worldview. Once you've created a list of potential titles, be sure to consider these 4 marketing questions. 1. Will the title yield unique search results? If your book title is too generic of a term, like Happy Birthday, it will have millions of unrelated search results, and your title will be less likely to rise to the top. Combining a common phrase with a character name or number is one way to make it stand out in search engines. So I might go with something like Happy 11th Birthday, Abigail Winters. Book titles can't be copyrighted, so your book can have the same title as another published work. However, that can make it harder to find, and it might be confusing for readers who pick up the wrong book. 2. Is the title way too similar to another published novel? Recently, a friend was telling me about a book she'd read, saying, "I think it was called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle," and I replied, "Do you mean The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo?" But sure enough, those were 2 entirely different novels that happened to have very similar titles, published only months apart, in an unlucky coincidence. In fact, the original UK title for the former is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, since the publisher decided to change the title in the US because of that similarity. In general, don't get too wedded to your title because your agent, editor, or the market might force you to change it. Joseph Heller's Catch-22 was originally entitled Catch-18, but because a more famous novelist at the time, Leon Uris, had recently published Mila 18, Heller's editor convinced him to change his beloved title. But that choice ended up being serendipitous, because the double digits better match the novel's themes of duplication and déjà vu. 3. Does the title roll off the tongue? Does it sound pleasing to the ear? Stephenie Meyer's Twilight was originally titled Forks. Her agent advised her to change it, and they brainstormed a list of words with atmosphere, which included Twilight. That one stood out, although Meyer herself has said, "It isn't absolutely perfect. To be honest, I don't think there is a perfect title for this book. Or if there is, I've never heard it." And in other countries, it has vastly different titles, from Temptation to The Boy Whom I Love is a Vampire. To me, the sun and moon theme evokes the idea of romance and fantasy, and the titles at least represent a narrative arc: New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn. With Forks, it might have ended up as Spoons, Knives, and Sporks. 4. Does the title bring to mind the right genre? 13 Reasons Why sounds like a contemporary drama. Baker's Dozen, on the other hand, feels more like a romantic comedy, or a bakery-themed cozy mystery than a teen tragedy. The tone is all wrong. You can borrow from current genre trends to attract your target audience, although leaning into them too heavily can annoy readers with the flood of similar-sounding books. Young adult fantasy, for example, loves to use words like queen, prince, ashes, blood, fire, sea, and stars, in various combinations. In adult fantasy, shadow, dragon, war, and city are the frontrunners. The title combined with the book cover creates a neon sign that tells readers, hey, this is a fantasy novel. Contemporary thrillers, for some reason, like using girl or woman in the title. Perhaps it's as Edgar Allan Poe said, "The death of a beautiful woman is unquestionably the most poetical topic in the world." Writer Michael Talberg theorizes that the genius of the word girl as opposed to boy or man or woman is that it appeals to both male and female readers alike. Personally, I think the emphasis on girl and woman coincides with the rise of domestic thrillers featuring complex female protagonists. In historical or contemporary fiction, there's often the blank's daughter or wife, like the Memory Keeper's daughter or the Time Traveler's wife. Across genres, the words light and dark remain popular. Some readers would love to see these title trends die a fiery death because they're bland and hard to remember. But I think these trends hint at a larger theme of what makes a title grab our attention. Michael Talberg suggests using sex or violence. Some of the most popular words depict the extremes of human experience. On one end, beautiful, kiss, heart, heat, and fire show up repeatedly. On the other, we find death, kill, die, and murder. By tapping into these extremes of the spectrum, you can more easily entice a reader. When choosing a genre-conscious title, put on your reader glasses. If you knew nothing about the story or cover design, in what genre would you assume that the title would be shelved? For instance, with a title like Seraphina and the Black Cloak, I'm going to immediately assume the book would be categorized as fantasy, and most likely middle-grade fiction, which is exactly what it is. As a quick side note, short stories follow similar naming trends as novels, using allusions or phrases, but they're just as often simple and to the point. Above all, they capture the core conflict in the story, as with The Lottery, The Yellow Wallpaper, and The Metamorphosis. As you consider your choices, know that authors across time have been pretty bad at naming their own novels. And if you're going the traditional publishing route, your editor or publisher will likely suggest a title change based on their knowledge of what makes readers pick up a book. Here's a brainstorming exercise. Not all of these will apply to your novel, but try your best to create a list of at least 10 options. Write a title inspired by the inciting incident or primary plot goal, an important item, a world-building concept specific to your novel, your protagonist's name, an important secondary character's name, your protagonist's name combined with an important place, object, or idea, the role of an important character, the novel's most important setting, a verb or noun paired with the setting, a phrase from your epigraph if you have one, a phrase from another work that inspired your themes, a symbol or metaphor used to represent a larger idea, a title with a double meaning, a noun or combination of nouns that pinpoint the theme, a phrase from the novel that captures the theme, a title that follows genre trends, an alliterative title, a title that includes an extreme, life or death, light or dark, love or hate, a one-word title, a five-word title, combinations of adjectives and nouns that are important to your story, a title inspired by an online book title generator. Choose your top 5 and survey your beta readers, family members, and maybe even random librarians and booksellers about which ones sound most intriguing. Have them rank the titles in order of appeal. Which one would make them pick up the book if they knew nothing about it? What appeals to them about their top pick? What would they assume about the genre based on those titles? If they dislike any of the options, what about it rubs them the wrong way? A title is your reader's first impression, so devote time to crafting one that tells a story. What book titles stand out to you? Capture my attention in the comments. Whatever you do, keep writing.